What's up, Geminites? It's your boy Gem Mint, back with a long overdue, updated every X-Men Omnibus release so far. So stay tuned. Alright, like I said, man, this is long overdue. This was the second every Omnibus video that I've ever done, and I always hated that video. I had so much headroom, I was too far away from the camera. This was before I was into editing and everything, so a lot of people have been asking for an update, and here it is. We're going to look at each book. We're going to do an aerial view to go through some of the artwork, and we'll talk about a couple of honorable mentions that I didn't really want to highlight here. These are only going to be Team X-Men books, so no Wolverine, no X-Force, no Deadpool, none of those, no custom omnibus. These are all just every X-Men omnibus that Marvel has released so far. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. First, we have The X-Men Volume 1. This is the Silver Age X-Men by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It collects issues 1 through 31 of the X-Men. This is the only omnibus to date that has been printed with a matte dust jacket for whatever reason. Came out with a $100 cover price. This is long sold out, sought after. It's about a $350 book on the aftermarket, and rightfully so. I mean, this is where it all began for the X-Men. Great stuff. Let's flip through and take a look at some of the stories, some of the first appearances, and more. Man, so the most sought after X-Men omnibus out there. They went with issue number 1 for the cover. Best choice. This and Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1 is what got me into omnibus. You got me with the cover of a key issue. Collecting the first half of the Silver Age run, issues 1 through 31. So many first appearances. You got first Vanisher, first Magneto, first X-Men Professor X. Issue 3 gets the Blob. Issue 4 gets the first Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. We get the first appearance of Eunice, the Silver Age appearance of Kazar, first Juggernaut, first Sentinels. Mimic, you remember Mimic? He got the first appearance of the Banshee. This had a $100 cover price when it came out. The story goes that, if you think about 60s superheroes, they all started with like a laboratory accident or something. You think about like the Hulk and characters like that. And the story goes that Stan Lee couldn't think of backstories. He just figured, hey man, we'll just make it so they were all born with these powers. They're mutants. And it spawned a huge franchise. It's also a metaphor for the civil rights movement. Mutants are kind of treated as minorities. They're always hated and feared because they're different. Professor X and Magneto kind of play the yin-yang of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. One of them turns the other cheek, wants to live in harmony, and the other one is by any means necessary. I used to collect these single issues. I used to hunt them down, try to get them CGC'd. I would have liked to have an entire X-Men run graded or an entire Silver Age Spider-Man run, but man, that got crazy expensive. And I found out about the Omnibus game, and even though these can be expensive, it's better than trying to hunt these individual issues down, And you could read them. You could always keep them. It's like history on the shelf. Alright, so follow up Volume 1. This Volume 2 of the X-Men finishes the original Silver Age X-Men title, collecting issues 32 through 66 and the Avengers 53. Now, issues 67 through 93 of the X-Men are all reprints of these original issues from the 60s, and we'll talk about that more when we jump into Uncanny. This is also long sold out. It doesn't sell for as much as Volume 1, but it still goes for over cover price. There are 2 covers. This is the DM variant, which is the original comic cover for issue 39. The variant is the same exact cover, but it's just a slightly updated art, so it's kind of hard to tell at a glance. But let's take a look at the second volume of the X-Men and finish up the Silver Age. I love the fact that the Silver Age X-Men is just these 66 issues. You can collect the whole entire story in 2 omnibus. You even get the Avengers tie-in. What do we got going on in this book? Spider-Man meets the X-Men in issue 36. Frankenstein issue was super whack. That was the beginning of the end. Then they highlighted some of the single characters like, Angel, Iceman, Beast, Marvel Girl. I think this is the first appearance of Polaris, and then her first cover. First appearance of Sauron. So, rounding out the Silver Age. Same look as the first volume. I used to have this book raw in a super high grade, all white cover. See, now that I remember, Polaris is all green. That's has to be thinking about Powers of 10. Boy, Kane Marco, the Juggernaut, Professor X half-brother, who used the gem of Cyttorak to become the unstoppable Juggernaut. The Frankenstein stuff was super whack. Iceman still looking like a snowman. Oh, yeah, get cleaned up there. Still an awesome book to own. You know, a little hard to read, a little wordy, a little dated dialogue, but still, this is where everyone came from, man. Back to Kazar. Great artwork for the 60s too, man. Alright, jumping into the Bronze Age, this is the Uncanny X-Men Volume 1. What happened after those reprints, like I mentioned, after issue 93 of X-Men, giant-sized X-Men came out and it introduced a new team, a newly created Wolverine for his second first full appearance, along with Nightcrawler, Colossus, Storm, and Thunderbird. Giant-sized X-Men 1 launched X-Men back into the mainstream view, then continued with the X-Men with issue 94 with the newly found team. It was actually dubbed All New, All Different X-Men moving forward. Now this collects Giant-Size X-Men 1, the X-Men 94 through 131, and then Annual 1. This is where Chris Claremont took over and kind of defined the X-Men. Now, a lot of people get confused and think that Claremont wrote Giant-Size X-Men 1, but he didn't. It was actually Len Wein who wrote Giant-Size X-Men. So, little known mistaken fact. Let's take a look. They had to go with Giant-Size X-Men for the cover of this dust jacket. It's the book that saved the X-Men and brought them back into the light. Very, very cool. Plain spine, but you don't need nothing on this spine, man. Just Uncanny Volume 1. Like I said, Giant-Size X-Men 1, then relaunching them back in X-Men 94, and boom. Continuing, or starting the beginning of an epic run that lasted hundreds of issues. The book has a little bit of an updated look from the other two. Got a little damage here on the top, though. What about that? Got some color graphic printed on the spine there. Awesome splash of Wolverine. New team versus old team. Here's the front, second Genesis. Out with the old, in with the new. A lot of people get confused and think that Chris Claremont wrote this. First appearance of Krakoa, who's funny enough playing a huge role in the X-Men universe right now with House of X. Jumping into All New, All Different, but not officially renamed until X-Men 142. Here goes Phoenix, some Juggernaut, Storm, Banshee, Leandra. X-Men start going into space and stuff. Enter Sauron. I always liked Sauron. I guess from the animated series. Very important book. Definitely a great jumping on point to get started on X-Men. I didn't mention, but I think Volume 1 currently is out of print. Same with Volume 2. Even though Volume 2 is already on a second printing, Volume 1 might have had multiple printings too. I don't recommend going out and buying these over cover price because, as we've seen recently, and we'll talk about it more throughout these books, a lot of these sold out books, sought after books have been reprinted, and you can get them for like 50% off cover price once they come out. This is an example of it. This is Uncanny X-Men Volume 2 with the DM variant, which is the original comic cover. It does have an updated cover for the regular cover, which is the same thing, just updated artwork. This is really a really cool book. It collects the Dark Phoenix saga with X-Men 132 through 141. Then it collects annuals 4 and 5. After the X-Men 141, which is part 1 of Days of Future Past, it then turns into the Uncanny X-Men with issue 142, which is the conclusion of Days of Future Past. So it collects then Uncanny X-Men 142 through 153, Avengers Annual 10, which is the first appearance of Rogue, and Marvel Fanfare 1 through 4. Uncanny X-Men is a great jumping on point for X-Men fans. I think Silver Age is a good jumping on point as well. We did make a whole video for this, but Uncanny is kind of really where they hit their stride. All right, here goes Volume 2. I love this cover. I think it looks great. I think they're in the blue spot on the moon where there's oxygen, so that's why they don't have helmets on. But issue 137, we have the Dark Phoenix Saga in here. Here's the spine. Here's the covers. Dark Phoenix Saga starts right here at issue 134, I believe. $100 cover price on this one. Alright, here's the front of the book. A little bit of an updated look, but still plain. Marble interior. Here goes Uncanny X-Men 142, Days of Future Past. You get your table of contents. Get Hellfire Club stuff and was it Madeline Pryor or was it I forget. Dark Phoenix stuff. This is in its original form. Classic material. Dope artwork. I love how they depict Wolverine, Nightcrawler. You still get letters in the back. The forward before Days of Future Past. Very important story. Awesome artwork. Awesome storytelling. Nice Doom cover. Arcade was the worst. Some Spider-Woman action. Mags. Nice crossover annual. Marvel Fanfare. Currently, the last volume of Uncanny X-Men is Volume 3, which collects Uncanny 154 through 175, X-Men Annual 6 and 7, Special Edition X-Men 1, Marvel Graphic Novel 5, Wolverine 1 through 4, which is his first solo series by Frank Miller, and then Magic 1 through 4. A lot of people are... This is also a DM variant, which collects the original cover of 167. The original cover was completely different artwork, modernized, and I just wasn't a fan of it. I really like the covers to match the contents. A lot of people want to see this reprinted as well, and a lot of people are waiting on Volume 4 to come out. So far, there hasn't been anything solicited for that, though. All right, the last volume of Uncanny X-Men. This is Volume 3, classic cover, looking like the death of Professor X, but I forget what happens. It's not the first time he dies or comes back. You got the covers on the back, and they start branching outside of the X-Men title with miniseries like Wolverine and Magic. This has a $125 cover price. All black Omni, but not with the foil this time. You have the actual coloring on the hardcover. Still have the marble inside. Classic Kitty Pryde. I believe this is where she joins the X-Men, actually. Wolverine 2 or 3 cover, I forget. Remember these? You could win a 10-speed racer. But great artwork to wrap up this set so far. I mean, we're hoping to see a Volume 4 solicited to continue and to get us up until the Mutant Massacre stuff and all those other Fall of the Mutants, Inferno issues. Wolverine looks like he got scarred up, man. Corsairs, Father of the Summers. The Wolverine miniseries was done by Frank Miller and was the inspiration for the second movie. Iconic cover, first solo series, where he learns discipline as a samurai, falls in love with a Japanese girl named Mariko. Iconic story has been collected in multiple issues. This was supposed to be their wedding, which I don't think went down. Silver Samurai, who was done dirty in the movie. Magic, very dark character. Colossus' little sister that gets stuck in limbo as a kid and grows up and becomes the ruler of limbo. This is cool stuff. X-Men Classic Omnibus. This is one that there's a lot of confusion about. X-Men Classic were reprints of the Bronze Age X-Men stuff, but it was more like a director's cut. They had additional pages with new artwork and more fleshed out storylines. I still haven't jumped to this Omni. It does collect issues 1 through 44, plus Marvel Fanfare 60. Let's flip through it and we'll take a look at what's collected in X-Men Classic. Alright, X-Men Classic. I love this cover. This is the cover for issue 1. Very cool cover. A lot of confusion about this book and what it collects and what it actually is. Myself included, I always thought they were just kind of like reprints of Uncanny X-Men. Had a $125 cover price. Virgin cover of issue 1 on the front with the same spine. And the same on the back, just the artwork only. So, basically, it is kind of the director's cut of Uncanny X-Men. See, look, it'll tell you right in the front. Classic X-Men reprinted the X-Men series beginning with the Giant Size X-Men book and X-Men 94. Added extra newly created pages to flesh out each reprinted story. And issues 2 through 44 included all new backup stories set between or during the reprints. So that's a pretty cool idea. They didn't just reprint the books. They added more to it. And I think at the end of each book or each issue, they tell you what was changed. See? They tell you about how this book reprinted X-Men 97, but Classic X-Men's 5 new pages inserted between panels 5 and 6 and 10 and 11 explore Havoc's feelings for Lorna and his relationship with Cyclops. So, see, at the end of the issue, it tells you what was added, which is helpful. Cool book. I definitely need to just read this front to back one day. Leandra with the Shi'ar. This also has the Dark Phoenix Saga stuff. It doesn't look like it's the whole story, though. Just covers. That's cool. Then you have the Dark Phoenix Saga Omnibus. This one was kind of like a money grab. It definitely double dips, and it actually has that updated artwork cover like I mentioned for Uncanny X-Men Volume 2. The thing that's cool about this book, though, is that you would have to collect a couple of omnibus of Uncanny to get the contents in here. This one has the entire saga all kind of gift-wrapped in one nice little omnibus. This collects X-Men 97 through 105, which has the first appearance of Phoenix, then 107 and 108, 125 through 138, which is the Dark Phoenix Saga, then Phoenix the Untold Story, plus material from classic X-Men, 6, 8, 13, 18, 24, and 43, which is, like I said, kind of those extra panels and pages from the director's cut. Bizarre Adventures 27 and What If 27, which is what if Phoenix won or destroyed everything. This was a more recent release. I don't think this one was included in the other video that I did. Dark Phoenix Saga, for the fan that just wants Dark Phoenix and nothing else surrounding it from the time. Alright, Dark Phoenix Saga, like I said, you have the same cover from Uncanny X-Men Volume 2, but it's the updated art, which is also the regular cover for that omnibus. Here goes the spine. And the back. So it's definitely a double dip, but it has a couple of extra features, and it is all in one book. So if you were to read this story throughout the Uncanny volumes, it would be volumes 1 and 2 you'd have to buy. Pretty interesting art choice for the wraparound cover. Just a look at the Phoenix, just yellow and black. Here's the table of contents. You got leading up to her becoming Phoenix in issue 101. Here we go right here. Kind of looking like the scene from the Dark Phoenix movie. And here's the iconic cover for 101. So she becomes Phoenix, and she's not necessarily bad, but then we lead into the Dark Phoenix Saga, where she breaks bad. Armageddon now. So this is still leading up to the Dark Phoenix, because I think that's the 134 issues. Here she's still Phoenix. You know, considering that the Uncanny volumes are out of print, and if you're really just a big fan of this saga, this is a good omnibus for you. Dark Phoenix, much more brutal than the movie. She destroys an entire planet. It's a dope read. Alright, Mutant Massacre. This is one that was just an oversized hardcover with the main storyline originally, and then it was released as an omnibus that included more issues that tied in. So it collects Uncanny X-Men 210 through 219 with Annual 11, and then it starts collecting other titles that connected the story. So X Factor 9 through 17 with Annual 2, New Mutants 46, Thor 373 through 374, and 377 and 378. Power Pack 27, Daredevil 238, Fantastic Four vs. the X-Men 1 through 4, and X-Men vs. Avengers 1 through 4, the original 80s one. So this kind of gave me hope for a lot of those big omnibus-styled, oversized hardcovers for X-Men, like Fatal Attractions, like Inferno, that eventually they would just collect them in omnibus format like they did with this one. Let's take a look at Mutant Massacre. Alright, here's the cover of Mutant Massacre, the one that gave everybody hope that Inferno will get an omnibus. A lot of people like this team, Australian Outback team, Mohawk Storm, first battle of Sabretooth and Wolverine, which is what, 212 and 213, I believe. Here's the issues. $100 cover price. Very nice wraparound cover here with Wolverine and Sabretooth. Here goes Uncanny 210, which is the cover of the Dust Jacket. Great artwork in these books. Some New Mutants crossovers. Here goes Sabretooth. This is the first battle. Wolverine vs. Sabretooth, round 1. Love the brown suit Wolverine. This was a dope issue. I used to have these CGC. Daredevil sticking it to him, yo. X Factor, which was the original 5 X-Men, branching off to do their own thing while Charles grooms the New Mutants. Wolverine with a cigar, got Havoc. That's cool. An unused cover for X Factor 16. That's pretty cool. I don't think I've read these Fantastic Four vs. X-Men or the original Avengers vs. X-Men. I should check that out. Here's issue 4. All right, so now we have X-Men Volume 1. It doesn't have the in front of it. It doesn't have Uncanny in front of it. This collects Claremont's Uncanny X-Men run that leads into the Jim Lee X-Men Volume. So this starts off with Uncanny 244 through 269, Annual 13, and Classic X-Men 39. This is where we start getting Jubilee. We start to get Jim Lee art. We get Psylocke joining the team, and so on. So we'll take a look at this. Claremont, Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, and more. All right, X-Men Volume 1. Claremont bringing us from Uncanny to X-Men. This is the original cover. Now, this and Volume 2 have variant covers as well that have, like, horizontal pictures with black bars on the top. I've seen them in person, like, one time. But you rarely hear about those being sought after. Here we go. First appearance of Jubilee with issue 244. Here's the first Jim Lee X-Men artwork. And then here's the first Psylocke stuff, who she didn't really look like Psylocke yet. $1.25 on the cover price. Traditional look for the book. Iconic cover here. They give you some prequel stuff about Fall of the Mutants and Inferno. But a defining era for X-Men. Definitely a good jumping on point as well. We got some Rogue action here. Love how they drew Colossus. This must be Jim Lee stuff already. A great time for X-Men, man. Here goes Psylocke. Now she's looking like Psylocke. This costume was kind of weird. These books are definitely sought after, man. A lot of people were asking me to pick it up for them when I was at San Diego Comic-Con. But, man, it has a chance of being reprinted. We're getting a lot of reprint announcements, so I would probably just hold off. Unless you have to have it now. I believe that these X-Men Omnibus are also out of print and pretty sought after. This is Volume 2 that, like I said, leads into the 90s X-Men run, that iconic Jim Lee cover and run. X-Factor 63 through 70, Uncanny X-Men 273 through 280, then X-Men 1 through 9, and some material from issues 10 through 11, plus Ghost Rider 26 and 27. So Volume 2, must-have book for any Jim Lee X-Men fan. All right, X-Men Volume 2, iconic Jim Lee cover. You gotta love it. Here's the spine, pretty plain. You have the Magneto cover from X-Men 1 on there. The issues it collects, leading into its own new run. First appearance of Omega Red, highest selling comic book of all time with X-Men 1. $125 cover price when it dropped. Old school black Marvel Omni. I'd love to jump back in here and read this again. But there's just so many unread books that I have that it would be a waste. But one day, that's why I like having the collection. You know, you'll have it forever, and whenever you want, you could jump back into it. I love the 90s artwork. That's my style. That's what's nostalgic for me. You got Beast lounging. I was talking about this the other day, like, Jean Grey always had, like, pink energy bubbles all around her or whatever. I feel like they were in swimsuits a lot in the 90s. Swimsuit editions, like, what is this, Sports Illustrated? There's Omega Red. That's dope, man. Look at that. Jim Lee, one of the best to ever do it for X-Men. If not the best. All right, here we go. This is X-Men Age of Apocalypse. This collects the entire storyline of Age of Apocalypse, which really is comprised of 4-issue miniseries with kind of alternate titles. So let's go through this list. You do get Uncanny X-Men 320 and 321, X-Men 40 through 41, Cable 20, X-Men Alpha, and then here comes the alternate miniseries. Amazing X-Men 1 through 4, Astonishing X-Men 1 through 4, Factor X 1 through 4, Gambit and the Externals 1 through 4, Generation Next 1 through 4, Weapon X 1 through 4, Excalibur 1 through 4, X-Man 1 through 4. Then you get X-Men Omega, Age of Apocalypse The Chosen, and X-Men Ashcan number 2. Awesome book here. This is definitely a great jumping on point for X-Men fans. Alternate universe caused by Legion, and a must-have. All right, one of the most recognizable X-Men stories of all time, The Age of Apocalypse. Legion goes back in time to try to murder Magneto in order to prevent all the atrocities that happen with him being alive. Accidentally kills Professor X and starts a new timeline, Age of Apocalypse. This came out with a $125 cover price. Here's all the different covers of the issues that it collects. And then the wraparound cover, which is awesome. This was actually that chromium cover. I forget if it was alpha or whatever. Mine has some kind of damage like throughout this whole thing right here. I don't know if you can see that on camera. I thought it was part of the artwork until I felt it. But what are you going to do? Now, some of this stuff I liked, and some of it I wasn't a big fan. There were some miniseries which I didn't really care for. Legion Quest is the storyline that leads up to Age of Apocalypse. There's actually a whole oversized hardcover that collects Legion Quest, but I think this collects like some material from one of those issues or so to get you caught up. But yeah, there's no really like Age of Apocalypse 1 through 6. It's told through all these alternate universes because you don't have Amazing X-Men in the real universe. It's Uncanny or just adjectiveless. But then you had here Astonishing, you had Amazing, and those are like the alternate timeline books. I couldn't stand this guy. What's his name again? Slug or something? Or Mr. He has some weird name. But still a great read, though. Cool artwork. Cool premise. Oh, yeah, so the wraparound cover is Alpha. This is the Omega Chromium book that came out to wrap it up. Then we have the Age of Apocalypse Companion Omnibus. So this collects a lot of extras surrounding the storyline. It collects X-Men Chronicles 1 through 2, Tales from the Age of Apocalypse 1 through 2, X-Man 1 and issues 53 and 54, Blink 1 through 4, X-Universe 1 through 2, Exile 60 through 61, X-Men Age of Apocalypse 1 through 6, and One Shot, plus What If 77 and 81, and What If X-Men Age of Apocalypse, plus materials from Hulk Broken Worlds 2, X-Men Prime, X-Men Annual 96, X-Men Endangered Species, Exiles, Days of Then and Now, and Official Handbook of the Marvel Universe, Age of Apocalypse 2005. So a pretty modern issue at the end of this to kind of go with this 90s storyline. Like I said, it's a companion. It's just meant to kind of add to the story, but it's not necessary reading if you want to just read the regular Age of Apocalypse story. But if you're like an Uber fan, it definitely gives you more of it. All right, if you love the Age of Apocalypse, you got to pick this up to get more of that world. Here's the front and the side. Like I said, it's not a required reading. It just gives you more. I love that do-ragged up Colossus, Sabretooth, and Wildchild. This had a $100 cover price when it came out. Here's what we have on the hardcover. Spine is the same. And on the back, you get Weapon X, looking less feral but still missing a hand. Alright, so Tells you what happened previously, and then these are just, like I said, tie-ins and revisiting of the world. Evil Cyclops with his long hair. He's the one that's responsible for blasting off Weapon X's hand. I guess the positive thing about this universe is that Wolverine did get with Jean Grey. Finally. Sinister looking crazy. This looks like throwback artwork. Now we have X-Men Avengers Onslaught. I kind of looped this in with X-Men books. It feels more like an X-Men book to me because Onslaught is such an X-Men villain. This is the 90s run that had big stakes in the Marvel Universe at the time. It ended up killing off a lot of heroes that ended up coming back in Heroes Reborn. I did a recent reads on this. I'm a fan of extreme art and the kind of big, huge shoulder pad characters, so I thought this was a fun book, although it wasn't really well received at the time. It collects Cable 32 through 36, Uncanny X-Men 333 through 337, X-Force 55 and 57 and 58, X-Men 15 through 19, X-Men 53 through 57, X-Men Unlimited 11, Onslaught X-Men Avengers 401 and 402, Fantastic Four 414, Incredible Hulk 444 and 445, Wolverine 104 and 105, X-Factor 125 and 126, Amazing Spider-Man 415, Green Goblin 12, Spider-Man 72, Iron Man 332, Punisher 11, Thor 502. Then we have Onslaught Marvel Universe, X-Men Annual 96, Onslaught Epilogue, X-Men The Road to Onslaught, and material from Excalibur 100, and Fantastic Four 416. This was kind of the problem with books in the 90s. They had so many different titles, and storylines took place in one or two issues throughout these titles. It was very confusing for me as a young preteen kid trying to read X-Men and Spider-Man. So that's what I kind of like about how these omnibus collect everything chronologically in the order you're supposed to read them. All right, let's take a look at X-Men Avengers Onslaught. Very cool. This is actually the wraparound cover. They show it much bigger, so we'll take a look at that. Here's the spine. A lot of different creators. Oh, look at that. Familiar faces. Jeff Loeb, Mark Waid, Andy Kubert, Adam Kubert. Onslaught. I forget his whole thing. What is he? Professor X and Magneto or something like that? $125 on the cover price when it came out. Like I mentioned, I did read and review this. You can check it out in the Recent Reads playlist. Here is the 2-page spread wraparound cover for the hardcover. It looks great. Very early 2000s. Bone Claw Wolverine, Feral Wolverine. So a story that was told over multiple titles. I remember this guy. What was his name again? Holocaust or something? I remember the action figure. I need to read my Heroes Reborn Omnibus and then the Thor Heroes Return books, which follows this up. I'll probably need to watch my own review just to get caught up on it. Love me some Ben Reilly Spider-Man. That's the Green Goblin issue where he becomes, I guess, a good guy for an issue. Alright, this is X-Men Revolution by Chris Claremont. He comes back to the title some years later and comes up with a storyline. This collects X-Men 100 through 109 with Annual 2000, Uncanny 381 through 389, X-Men Unlimited 27 through 29, X-Men Black Sun 1 through 5, Bishop, The Last X-Man 15 and 16, and Cable 87. Let's take a look at Revolution by Chris Claremont. So I've yet to read Revolution by Chris Claremont. I hear it's not really his best work, so I guess that's why I've always been hesitant to go ahead and jump into it. But we'll take a look at it together. Here's the dust jacket. The artwork looks great. $100 cover price when it came out. Alright, here is the graphic on the hardcover. Spine is the same as the dust jacket. So is the back. Let's take a look at this bad boy together. So you got, like, looks very early 2000s artwork. Some Gambit and Rogue action. So it definitely looks early 2000s extreme, right? You got Phoenix here. I need to jump into this one day and just knock it out. Pretty interesting. Alright guys, this is one that I consider a good jumping on point as well. This is New X-Men by Grant Morrison. This book has had a second printing and I think it's still available. This to me is a more accessible Grant Morrison book, and I don't really mind the artwork as much in this as I do with a lot of other Grant Morrison team-ups. Who does the artwork? I always forget his name. Frank Quitely. Yeah. Not a huge fan of Frank Quitely, his art style, but it doesn't really distract me in this book. I think it's a good jumping on point. It influenced the original X-Men movies, and it's a good read. It collects New X-Men 114 through 154 and New X-Men 2001. I'm pretty sure New X-Men is that 90s X-Men title just renamed, and that's why it starts at 114. So this kind of follows up the Jim Lee era, 90s era of X-Men. Alright, so New X-Men, Grant Morrison. You can thank this book for, what did you expect, yellow spandex? They gave them kind of an updated look with more like tactical jackets and uniforms. This had a $125 cover price when it came out. I'm just not a fan of Frank Quitely's art. I mean, look at these jackets. They look very wrinkled and puffy and just unnatural to me. It almost reminds me of like Beavis and Butthead or something. Old school Marvel Omnibus style. Silver logo with the silver spine. This was the first printing. They have a second printing out, which I think is still in stock. They used to do this marble look too in all the front covers of these old X-Men or these old Omnibus. I think this is where we get the first appearance of Phantom X too in here. I could be wrong. You also get the first appearance of Zorn, or the first iteration of Zorn, I should say. Professor Beast. Logan looks crazy different in this book. You get the Cuckoo sisters. I think there was originally 5 of them. Inspiration for X-Men First Class. So you get some Shi'ar stuff in here as well. But it's a good jumping on point. It's definitely a different take on X-Men, but looking at it, it kind of brings you into the modern X-Men world after jumping out of the 90s stuff. Looks like I have some separation happening with the glue. Let's put it away before I break it. A great follow-up to New X-Men and a good jumping on point. Well, I think you should read New X-Men and then Astonishing X-Men, but this is a very accessible read. Great story, great art. This is written by Joss Whedon, who directed the first 2 Avengers movies. Collects Astonishing 1 through 24 and Giant Size Astonishing #1. This is solicited for a reprint because it was an out-of-print book and highly sought after for a long time, but it has been solicited, and I think it comes out March of 2020. You guys should definitely jump on this book. Let's flip through it, and I'll show you why. Front of the dust jacket. I really like the team on this book, and I like the version of these characters as well. Astonishing X-Men. My dust jacket feels a little faded. I think I got this online through Half Price Books. Somebody in like the Omnibus community helped me out with it. It had a $75 cover price when it came out, so that's what the reprint will cost. The best $40 you'll ever spend if you buy it on day one through like one of the online sites. I bet you it'll have a different hardcover. This is so old school looking. It's like a blue leather look. It has the silver X logo and the silver spine here. Nothing on the back. It might even have the Half Price Books receipt in here somewhere. I think I kept it. But like I mentioned, it follows up Morrison's new X-Men, but the art style I like much, much more. And Joss Whedon's writing is much more accessible than Morrison's, although the new X-Men from Morrison, like I mentioned, is not your typical confusing Morrison. I did also do a review on this book. If you want to check out my recent reads playlist, you should definitely check it out. Great covers, fun story. A lot of, Colossus returns. I think he was dead for some time before this came out. So Kitty Pryde plays a big role. Here they are right now. If I recall, Beast is really Dark Beast hiding out as regular Beast. I'm pretty sure. You get some newer mutants with new powers. But definitely a great X-Men book. I love having it collected here in just one omnibus. So the last one is kind of not really an X-Men book, but I lump it in there just kind of like Onslaught. This is X-Men Legacy, which is a Legion storyline. It's the more modern iteration of Legion. I don't know, Professor X's son deals with mutants and mutant powers. Like I said, I just kind of lump it up with it. 1 through 24 of X-Men Legacy, a quick, fun read. Gives you more of an idea of who Legion is, and it's the last X-Men book on our list. So from what I know about Legion, this book is very different than his 90s stuff, and I think the show is way different as well. This was around the Marvel Now time, and this cover always kind of got me, kind of showing you how Legion has multiple mutant powers and his multiple personalities in his mind. I thought this was actually a really good read and explained his powers the best that I've ever been explained them. A thin omnibus, it's a shorter read, came out with a $75 cover price. I'm not really that familiar with the creative team, but I thought it was a good read. No wraparound cover on this one. This is just the graphic on the hardcover. The spine is the same as it is on the dust jacket. And this is just a bigger image as what we saw in the dust jacket. Legion as a character is the character who was responsible for Age of Apocalypse. Now, this is much after that, of course. And from what I remember, it's just him dealing with his multiple personalities in his mind. I don't really remember the overall impact to the Marvel Universe. It might not have had any. But I did do a review on this book if you guys want to go through my recent reads playlist and check it out. I'd have to check it out to kind of remember what happened here. But the artwork was good. It was fun. The covers were excellent for this run, too. That's one of the things that drew me to it. I recommend this book, though. I liked it. I do want to give an honorable mention for Wolverine and the X-Men because it's definitely an X-Men title that's led by Wolverine, but it's more like the third Wolverine omnibus in the Jason Aaron run, so that's why I didn't include it in the original lineup. It collects Wolverine and the X-Men 1 through 35, then 38 through 42 with Annual 1. It's a great read. It's a good jumping on point. It leads into Avengers vs. X-Men from around 2014 or something like that. Gives us a lot of stuff with Quentin Quire, the reincarnation of Apocalypse, a newer school on Krakoa. And I just wanted to highlight it in this video. All right, here's a better look at the dust jacket for Wolverine and the X-Men. Mind Control Me sticker on the back. Everyone's messing with Logan. This is the reformed Logan, not the one we're used to, who's the best he is at what he does. Here's the spine. And the back, which is homage to Uncanny X-Men, or I guess just X-Men 141, with Wolverine and Storm. This had a $100 cover price when released. The inside of the dust jacket here, giving you some info on the book, the creators. You have a wraparound cover with Wolverine, the X-Men, and the island of Krakoa. You get a table of contents. Then you have issue 1. I really enjoyed this. This book is kind of when I started getting back into comics, and I picked up Uncanny X-Men, which I believe was on volume 3 with that whole Regenesis. And then this book was another X-Men title. This was just after Schism. And I really enjoyed it. It led into a Marvel event, which was like the first Marvel event that I've read coming back into the game with Avengers vs. X-Men. Which, I mean, I guess it wasn't really that well received, but I liked the whole Phoenix Force thing and the Emma Frost stuff with Cyclops. I thought it was cool. A lot of people say that, you know, Wolverine and Cyclops kind of switched roles around this time, where now Cyclops was like the rogue renegade. There he is with the Phoenix Force. Renegade guy, and Wolverine was, you know, the good leader, tending the school and everything. I enjoyed it. A lot of good school stuff, which a lot of X-Men titles kind of miss out on, the whole school aspect. This is where Iceman starts becoming an Omega level mutant. He makes this big Voltron ice sculpture that's like, it's not even him, he's just controlling it. I like the Brood student character. I love Quentin Quire. You have the BAMPs. You have the school just trying to destroy and kill everybody. Kind of like a living danger room. Really dope read. Alright guys, so that's my updated every X-Men Omnibus release so far. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Make sure to drop me a like and subscribe to the channel for more daily content, which includes every Omnibus checklist like this, plus more. Stay minty fresh. Peace.